Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Erik and Derek, Tiger Football Talk. We're just two Clemson grads who love nothing more than to talk a little more about Clemson football each week, and it just feels good to say that because it's been a long off season, long awaiting the return of college football. We got to see it a little bit last weekend, but this is the game that not only Clemson and Georgia fans are looking forward to, but really all of college football. It's the first marquee matchup, and really just a slugfest between two teams who are looking to go to the college football playoffs. So before we get into the details, Erik, break down the game just a little bit as far as when it is and where it's at.
Yeah, man, no kidding. College football is back. Feels like it's been forever, and now it's right around the corner. You've got number 3 Clemson versus number 5 Georgia in the Duke's Mayo Classic. It's in Charlotte, North Carolina, Bank of America Stadium. 7:30 p.m. kickoff with College Game Day there, and it's on ABC. Look, Georgia and Clemson only separated by 70 miles. Not a lot of people realize that this was one of the original rivalries. It dates all the way back to 1897. However, there's been some on and off. They go in spurts of playing each other or not playing each other, with Georgia being in the SEC and Clemson being in the ACC recently. They've only met 5 times since 1995. But the sad thing for Clemson fans, Georgia controls this rivalry. They're 42-18-4 all time in the series. And the last time we met, in 2014, Georgia whooped Clemson 45-21. The year prior, though, 2013, Clemson got the last laugh in a 38-35 barn burner in Death Valley with the help of Taj Boyd and his 5 touchdowns.
Yeah, it's interesting looking at this because the last time Clemson lost a home opener was to Georgia. The last time Georgia lost a home opener was to Clemson. Georgia to us is very similar to Auburn. Listen, we don't play each other all that much, but every time we play, it's heated, it's a rivalry, and honestly, the fan bases just don't like each other. Clemson is obviously in search of its 7th straight playoff appearance and 3rd national championship in 6 years. You know, Georgia's looking to topple Alabama. They've been in that upper echelon. They've made it to the college football championship, but they just haven't been able to really get over that hump and win that meaningful game in order to take that next step. Georgia is really as talented as any team in the country. They're never outside the top 5 as far as their recruiting rankings. 247 Sports ranks their talent number 2 in the country, only behind Alabama. And then the part that I really wanted to bring up is Will Muschamp, the former coach of the Gamecocks, which I feel like a lot of Clemson fans may not even know that he's the former head coach. Will Muschamp's actually on this staff. I think he joined them in the secondary, and then the special teams coach, had to leave for personal reasons. So Will Muschamp will be suiting up in the terrible colors that is the Georgia Bulldogs, and he'll be their special teams coach for UGA. So there's already going to be a little bit of familiarity there. It is what it is, but there's just so much online for this game. But we're not going to dilly-dally around. We just want to jump right into it. So, for the Clemson fans, Erik, walk us through the Georgia offense just a little bit.
Yeah, Georgia offense, I think everyone has heard of JT Daniels. I think the whole spotlight's going to be on him. He came in the last 4 games of the season last year, went 80 for 119 for 1,200 yards, 10 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He kind of lit it up. I will say it was towards the back half of the season when they did not play that many great teams. So it'll be interesting to see when he plays a little bit more competition. I think that's going to be the big thing. However, star wide receiver George Pickens is out due to the ACL injury he sustained, and Dominic Baylock is also very doubtful for this game. Tight end Darnell Washington had foot surgery last week, so it's doubtful he goes as well. We'll see. Their center also, Warren Erickson, will be wearing a cast on his snapping hand. I thought for sure he wasn't going to go, but all signs seem to him starting.
JT Daniels really turned this team around. If you look back to a year ago, Georgia was sitting there with a lot of uncertainty at the quarterback position. They had Newman coming over from Wake Forest, but then he opts out with COVID. JT Daniels doesn't get the start, but comes on strong late on the season, really ignites that Georgia offense that was putrid in the beginning of the year. If you look at it, this team is built around their running backs. JT Daniels, I think, is a decent quarterback. Maybe he's going to get some Heisman hopeful consideration, but it's all going to be based off of the stable of 5-star running backs. Zamir White and James Cook are the 2 I'm going to mention, but it's likely you'll end up seeing 4 or 5 running backs by the time this game is done. Zamir White was a former number 1 running back coming out of high school a few years ago. James Cook, I'm pretty sure it's the brother of Dalvin Cook, the FSU great, on the team as well. Great threat coming out of the backfield. I think he'll end up getting the start, and he was a number 3 running back a few years ago. So if you look at the stable that they're going to have, they're not going to get tired. They're going to rotate people in. And then the offensive line, they average about 315 pounds, about 6'3", 315 pounds. The offensive line has been dominant the last 2 or 3 years. Yes, they have to replace, I believe, 2 starters on that offensive line, but Power Football Focus had them ranked in the top 5 for returning starters. This is going to be a good group, and this is where it's going to come down to. We're going to talk about this a lot in this short little segment, but it's going to come down to winning the line of scrimmage. We just mentioned the fact that Georgia might be losing some people on the front end as far as their wide receivers and their tight ends. But if they can run the ball for 300 yards, if they can run it right up the gut, similar to what Ohio State was able to do against us, it may not matter who they're throwing to, because it may just matter who they might be handing the ball off to.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because this is Kirby Smart's really first time he's had a quarterback that can really throw the ball. I mean, Justin Fields, sure, but they gave him away for some reason. Not sure why. But having the ground game that Georgia has, and now mixing this in with a guy that can pass the ball, it's going to be a full package for Georgia. The offensive line is somewhat questionable, but heck, we'll say the same thing about Clemson's offensive line. And this is going to be a barn burner because both D-lines, Georgia's D-line and Clemson's D-line, is stacked. So it's really going to be which offensive line can hold up the most to give their team either running lanes or their quarterbacks the ability to pass the ball.
Yeah, I want to talk about Georgia's defensive line because Clemson, we're used to talking about our own defensive line, one of the best units in the country. And last year we were very athletic, but we were young. We did not hold up well against running the ball just because I don't think that we were in the weight room enough. We were just a young team up front with Brzee and Miles Murphy. Xavier Thomas was dealing with COVID. He wasn't full strength. And so when you look at the Georgia defense, their front seven, I think Georgia fans would say that they're the best front seven in all of college football. Kirby Smart came from Alabama. He was tutored underneath Nick Saban. If you look at this team, listen to what we're saying. We're saying that this team may not be that explosive, but they can run the football all day long. They're going to have a good offensive line per usual, and then just really aggressive, nasty defense up front. That is the Alabama of old. Now, you think of Tua and Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddle thrown around, but the way that Kirby Smart has built this team is based off of the old Alabama. And this defense is right in line with that. Outside linebacker Adam Anderson, their sack leader from a year ago, is just an absolute menace. He'll be all over the field. He'll be in DJ's face probably most of the night. The weakness that they do have is going to be their DBs. They're replacing 7 DBs from a year ago. They went out and grabbed an old Clemson person. I'll let you talk about that later, but they're going to have some holes in that back end, and it's just a matter of, can our offensive line hold up long enough for DJ to be able to connect with some of our wide receivers?
Yeah, you got to believe one of the headlines coming into this game has to be Darion Kendrick. Darion Kendrick, one of the top CBs for Clemson in years past, kind of got kicked off the team or he left due to personal issues, and he moved right on over to Georgia. And now his first start, he is their number 1 left cornerback. He is starting against Clemson, the team that he was brought up with. It's going to be a headline, and definitely Kendrick is going to be out there trying to make a statement against his former team.
Yeah, I mean, Justin Ross is, he was talking about, Justin Ross is obviously thrilled to be back on the field. He missed last year with a neck injury, or with spinal injury, sorry. And so he was talking about, one of his best friends is Darion Kendrick. Darion Kendrick's from Rock Hill, South Carolina. So the fact that he is suiting up on the other side for UGA, it's not a Darion Kendrick decision. Clemson decided to let him go. He had a lot of off-field issues during the season and then just made some mistakes after the season. And Dabo Swinney just decided that, he can just no longer be part of the program. But when you look at this offense, it's going to begin, end, middle. Everything's going to be running through DJ this year. You do not have Travis Etienne, but you do have a bevel of wide receivers at your disposal. So, Erik, walk us through the Clemson offense a little bit.
Hey, right now the good news for Clemson is that there are no injuries that will hold any Clemson starters out from taking the field, which is really good news coming off an offseason, especially with a lot of young guys in there hitting the weight room. Like you said, this is DJ Uyangale's first start without Trevor on the team. But DJ has not thrown an interception in 117 attempts. Okay, I know. People are going to be screaming about at their computers and their televisions that he only played in garbage time. He did play an entire game against Notre Dame at night on the road, so I'll throw that in there. In 2020, he was 78 for 117 for 914 yards, 5 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Very similar stat line to JT Daniel. So it's setting up to be that kind of game. Which quarterback's going to have the best game? Which offensive line's going to have the best game? And which coaching staff is going to be able to get their team in the right position at the right time, make the right calls. Very curious this year to see how Elliott does play calling for Clemson. With Trevor gone, with ETN gone, with new blood stepping in, Will Shipley's a guy that you're going to hear a lot of this year. True freshman running back. Dynamic. How are we going to use these dynamic players, play calling, tight ends, getting all these people involved? Going to be very interesting to see this Saturday.
I'm literally sitting over here thinking about all the weapons that Clemson has at its disposal. How will we use freshman 5-star running back Will Shipley? Kobe Pace coming in, is he the smash mouth running back? And then Lynn J. Dixon is the change of pace speed to the outside. Then you look at the wide receivers. We have E.J. Williams. We have Justin Ross coming back. We have Ngata. Azure looked like an athletic freak over the summer. It is ridiculous how healthy we are on offense, how many offensive playmakers we're going to have on the field, and yet none of that may matter if our offensive line cannot stand up to the task. Our offensive line, we can debate, are we good, are we great, are we mediocre? It's the first game of the year, so we don't know. It may not matter, because even if we're good, even if we're great, Georgia defense will still come for you. They are just that good that it does not matter who you are. They're going to be coming right around the corner. DJ is going to have to be mobile. I'm not saying he needs to run for 50 yards, but he will have to make the first defensive lineman that comes in his face. He will have to make them miss. Whether it's him standing strong like Ben Roethlisberger, but if he goes down, on the first point of contact every time, Georgia could have 6, 7, 8 sacks in this game. And DJ is consistently looking at 2nd and 12 or 2nd and 14, and it just really helping out those inexperienced DBs on the back end. For Georgia, but it's going to come down to play calling. We also have tight ends. I'm not going to get into them because every year we talk about tight ends and nothing ever happens for the Clemson tight ends. So I don't want to go that far, but we have more offensive skill power than anybody else in the country, not named Alabama and Ohio State. And we're not better than those, but we're right in line with them. So there's just no reason for our offense to not have a good performance, even with the front seven that Georgia has.
No, I agree completely. And on the defensive side, we're bringing back everybody on the D-line, all of our linebackers. We lost Arion Kendrick. We talked about that. So we have a little bit of a lack of depth at DB, but Booth's still going to be there. I mean, we're going to be pretty loaded at defense. And for me, the question is, how does Brent Venables come back from that playoff loss where he was exposed? And can he make the adjustments, and can he get this team to play as well as he needs to get them to play, especially in this opener?
Yeah, and let's be honest, Brent Venables does best when a team is a little more one-dimensional. And I don't want to call Georgia one-dimensional because JT Daniels, I do think, is a talented quarterback. I'm just looking at who they have available to them, and I don't think there's anyone that necessarily scares you, that forces you to keep 2 safeties deep. The last 2 times that Brent Venables was exposed, you're talking about LSU the year before and then Ohio State last year. That is a outstanding quarterback that went, I think top 10 overall between Justin Fields and Joe Burrow. That is a lot of wide receivers on the outside, and you had to respect it. And our CBs kept getting beat, and not just beat for a 10-yard gain, but for 80-yard touchdown bombs. I'd be interested to see if Georgia has the ability to do that, not only because they have some wide receiver injuries, but can JT Daniels hit them, and does JT Daniels have enough time in the pocket in order to do that? You talked about bringing back our entire D-line. I think we bring back our entire two deep at defensive line, one of the best units in the country, and our D-line versus Georgia D-line, they're very different. Georgia's D-line is built to stop the run. They are big, they are heavy, they're not quick twitch, which doesn't mean they can't rush the passer. It just means they're going to go through your offensive line, not necessarily around them. Clemson's is built differently. We tend to go around the tackle, use skill and finesse. I'm interested to see, though, how does our defensive line hold up against Georgia? Can we keep them under 200 yards rushing, or does time of possession get away from us and our defense on the field for far too long?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I really love about the first game of the year, and everyone's like, oh, why would you schedule a top 5 team? Granted, the schedules are made 20 years in the past, but one thing I love about it is it comes down to coaching, right? You can get so much talent on the field, you can practice as much as you can, but at the end of the day, it's coaching, and how do you make adjustments on the fly? Because you can look at game tape from last year, but half of our team didn't play last year. They're brand new starters. We've got different play calling because you have the different people that we have at positions. So how can Kirby Smart and his coaching staff adjust to this new offense with DJ and Will Shipley and Lynn J versus how can we adjust to JT Daniels, which we don't have much film on him, and the 2 running backs? But I love that. This is true football in my mind. It's you put your 2 best teams out there, you coach on the fly, and the best team wins.
And now, I do want to get your opinion on this because this is what everyone's going to be talking about before the game even starts. Does the winner of this game book their ticket for the college football championship? And then does the loser basically get erased from contention?
One, I don't think the loser gets erased from contention. I think it's a very long season. I mean, unless the loser completely gets blown out, which I don't think anybody's expecting that to happen. I don't think that's going to happen. Does the winner punch their ticket? I mean, they definitely punch their ticket to staying in the top 5, top 6. But again, it's a long season. We've seen Clemson stumble in the past against no-name opponents that are not ranked. If you have something like that and then you lose in the ACC championship to a North Carolina team that's up and coming, you're out. I mean, college football nowadays is you go undefeated or you have a really close loss and you run the tables. So I think being early in the season, if you do get a loss here, you've got the entire season to build back your resume and you're okay. And if it ends up being a close game that everyone expects and both teams stay top 4, your loss is to a top 4 team, and I think that's very respectable.
Agreed. I think this game honestly might mean more to Georgia than it will Clemson, only because Georgia has not been able to get over the Alabama hurdle, and they would not meet Alabama this year except for the SEC championship game. If they were to beat Clemson, and Clemson's still a good team the rest of the year, top 5, all that sort of stuff, that means Georgia, presumably they go the rest of the year undefeated. If they don't, we have a different conversation. But if they go into SEC championship game with a win over Clemson and Florida, and then lose to Alabama in the SEC championship game, which I would assume most experts would have that as a prediction, they still would have a very good argument to get in, even though they did not win their own conference. So that's the only reason why I said this game might end up being better for them. Clemson, on the flip side, I don't think will face as much of a daunting task. We'll end up with maybe a North Carolina or a Miami in the ACC championship game. If you win the ACC, I think you'll end up in the playoffs. But this is a big opportunity for Georgia to make a later Alabama game less significant.
Yeah, I will say one thing really quickly before we move on, which is I always have a hard time seeing 2 SEC teams in the playoff for this reason alone. If Alabama does become as dominant as everyone expects them to be, and they win the SEC championship, they should be the overall favorite to be the number 1 in the playoff. Which then leaves a Georgia potentially sneaking in at number 4, and will they post the rematch? I don't think that they will. That's always my biggest, not sure how that works out. But hey, let's get to our predictions for this game. The spread is 3 points. Clemson's the favorite at this moment. It seems almost like a pick 'em at this point. Again, it's a neutral site in North Carolina and Charlotte. Over-under right now is pretty low at 51.5 points considering the high-powered offenses. But the defenses are also elite, so I can see it. I can understand why that is that. Derek, what's your prediction for this game?
Yeah, listen, these defenses are 2 of the top 5 defenses, I think, in the entire country. Clemson doesn't necessarily have a weakness on defense. It doesn't mean that they're a perfect defense. It means that they returned a ton of starters, a lot of talent all over the field. Georgia does have a weakness on defense, which is the back end, which means that as long as DJ can get time, I think he'll be able to have some explosive plays. I think if Georgia scores, I think that their longer drives wearing down the Clemson team. Now, in today's day and age, 51.5 just seems like an easy over, and I'm going to take it. I think Clemson's going to win this game 35-31. I think a lot of people might be surprised about me expecting Georgia to score 31 on Clemson. This is 2021. To have a game against two top 5 opponents not get into the 30s, I don't think you're seeing that as much anymore. These 24-21 games, there's enough talent on both sides of the ball that both these teams should be in the 30s by the end of it. Erik, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with you. I definitely got the over here. This is a tough one. It truly is a pick'em in my mind. I think I've talked about this in all of our other episodes. College football is a game of momentum. It's a game of when you get that turnover or shut them out, and who gets the last drive at the half and the first one at the start of the second half. So I really do have this as a pick'em. I currently have Clemson winning this one 31-28. And it's going to go back to coaching. I think Dabo and his coaching staff have the experience. To me, this feels like a playoff game. This feels like you've got a ton of time to prepare. It seems like a game that you're going to have to make adjustments on the fly, adjustments at halftime. And I think the Clemson coaching staff has a little bit of an edge in that scenario, since Georgia has not been in a playoff since 2017. And that's why I got them by 3. But again, with everything we've said about this game, it could be a barn burner. It also could be a blowout in either direction based on whose O-line can really stack up against the D-line.
I will say, we didn't mention this earlier, but I think discipline is going to be key early on this game. This is going to be an emotionally charged game. Darion Kendrick matching up with some of his former, teammates. Will Muschamp knowing a lot about it. Both teams understanding what's at stake here. And honestly, not hitting anybody else for the last 6 or 7 months. They're excited to hit another team. I think the team that comes out and is the most disciplined the first quarter, doesn't do late hits, out of bounds late hits on the quarterback. I think that's going to be important to make sure both teams, who gets settled in, gets comfortable first, not getting rattled, not getting out, playing outside of themselves. That's something to look for with the first game of the year in a nationally televised game with emotions running high.
Super excited for this game. Super excited to be back on the air. Welcome back to everybody else that's watching. Hey, if you like our content, like, subscribe. We'll be here post-game after the game Saturday night, 7:30, ABC. Can't wait for it. Go Tigers.
Go Tigers.